You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
Wherever you are tuned into the 38th edition of the Minor League Baseball Show Before the Show podcast, welcome aboard. It's holiday season. It's Tyler Mon and Sam Dykstra in the same room yet again.
Yeah.
Both of us wearing Santa Claus costumes just the whole time. It's
Christmas time in New York.
Yeah, when we announced the Milbies, we each wore tuxedos.
Yeah, now we're in Santa.
And now we're in Santa suits.
Yeah, but not the ones we had for SantaCon because we don't do SantaCon because it's bad. So, just for this podcast.
Just only podcast-specific Santa attire required. So welcome in, everybody. We're rolling out a couple of special holiday edition episodes of the show before the show, the Minor League Baseball podcast. I am Tyler Mon. The man on my left is Sam Dykstra. And the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go kind of a different road from how the first 37 editions of this show were. And we're going to present to you Christmas/holiday/New Year's 2016 wish lists, resolutions, the things that major league organizations are going to be aiming for from their minor league stars, their minor league systems in 2016. We're going to do that first off this week, Christmas week. If you are listening to this, you will be hearing American League teams today. We're going to roll through AL East, Central, and West in that order. We'll go alphabetically by division so as to not have anybody give us a whole, oh, why'd you spend so much time talking about the Twins? So we'll do the American League today. Next week, we will roll out the National League. We'll discuss some NL teams, and we'll kind of give you at least our thoughts on the biggest storylines, the biggest goals, the biggest aims for major league organizations heading into 2016. So let's kick it off, Sam. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
We're as always, going to let Sam just expound on the smart points, and I'll just be here to be, the idiot throughout the entire conversation. But we'll start in the American League East with the Baltimore Orioles, which is an organization that even people like me, even the non-smart ones on this podcast, have a lot to like because there's been a lot of big graduations in that system, guys who have come through and made big impacts, but there have also been some guys who have stalled a little bit. The biggest storyline in the Orioles system obviously has to be Dylan Bundy because of what the last 4 years have brought for him. It seems like when I talked to him in Arizona, we had that on the podcast a while back, it seems like Dylan Bundy should be about 29. And he's still a very, very young guy. He will enter next year. He's the MLB pipeline number 2 ranked prospect in the organization, but he'll enter next year at still just 23. He just turned 23 years old in mid-November. But what are the biggest storylines for you? He stands out. Hunter Harvey, obviously, is a guy who stands out.
Right.
For the Orioles, what stands out going into 2016?
Yeah, those are the two things I kind of have on my wish list for the Orioles. Is just health for both Hunter Harvey and Dylan Bundy. Bundy, you kind of point out, he does feel that old. And one interesting note for him is that he's out of options.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to.
That is a very good point.
And you wouldn't expect that coming from a guy in his young 20s or early 20s. So
signed a major league contract. That was his initial major league deal.
Yeah,
his initial contract was a major league deal,
and
which
they put him
in
in the bullpen
right
at the end of I can't remember what season that was, a couple years back, and then the injuries hit because they were expecting him the next year to crack the rotation,
right.
And they didn't expect this to happen. For him to break down so many times. So either he's going to have to start the year in the majors after throwing so few innings this year and even getting shut down in the AFL, or they're going to have to put him on the disabled list or DFA him, which I'm sure they don't want to do. You don't want to do that with your number 2 prospect. So they want health from him first and foremost, maybe stash him in the bullpen, but they want to make that an easy solution for him. Hunter Harvey did not pitch at all this year, had a couple elbow injuries. He's their top prospect according to Pipeline right now. Anywhere you check, they're going to be intertwined, those two. You could go 1-2 either way. So they want those two guys healthy and on the field and making baseball decisions, not injury decisions.
That's been so tough for an organization to go through something like you've gone through with Dylan Bundy is tough enough, but then to see Hunter Harvey miss all this season when it seemed like the last couple of years when the Orioles were winning the division or contending for division titles, it seemed like they had a pretty significant wealth of talent that was on the way or close, and Bundy led that group. And now, Hunter Harvey's a lower-level guy. Now seeing those guys stall makes you a little bit worried, I think, if you're an Orioles fan.
Yeah, definitely. The person I would get excited about is Chance Sisco.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good offensive catcher. He's the one person to get legitimately excited about. He's not as ranked high because his ceiling's not necessarily as high as those other two. But if you need somebody to cling on to, and as an Orioles fan, I think Cisco's your guy.
One of the guys who I really like in that system too, just because of his story, is Michael Givens, and Givens is going to enter this season as the, I believe, number 8 ranked prospect in the organization, but is a former infielder, was converted to the pitcher's mound, made his major league debut this year, and just one of those really cool stories to watch in Major League Baseball. So let's move along in the American League East. The Boston Red Sox, very rough season this year, but obviously a decade of a whole ton of success, predicated a lot on some very strong homegrown guys. A lot of the best talent in this system right now is low in this system. Yoan Moncada, who is the top prospect in the organization, time with Greenville this year. Rafael Devers was the same. Number 4 prospect in the system is Andrew Benintendi, who is just a draft pick this year. What stands out to you about the Red Sox going forward?
Yeah, the thing I think that should be the top on their wish list, and I think is the top on any Red Sox fans' wish list, is kind of to take the shackles off Moncada a little bit. They started him out slow, started him back in Florida at extended spring training, then let him get his feet under him in Greenville, had some struggles there, but really took off in the second half of the season, both literally and figuratively. His speed just blew off everybody off the course in the South Atlantic League, but they wanted him to get that stability, first full season in America, get culturally down, get everything down, that kind of thing. I think next year you're going to see him fly. A lot of people talk about a 2017 potential, major league debut for him, and if that's going to happen, he's going to have to hit at Salem, and if he hits at Salem, I hope they challenge him and move him to Portland. I really want to see what Anderson Espinosa is going to do, too, as a teenager. He's going to definitely be in the South Atlantic League to start the year. How they're going to handle his innings will be interesting, but if he's as exciting as he was in the GSL and in the DSL, I think that will be really something. But the big thing, I think, is just how high can Yoan Moncada climb, because if he has a good season, even performs at AA, in his early 20s, he's going to be somebody who's going to really push in the way to Fenway in 2017, and we're going to be talking about him as maybe the game's top prospect if he does what he did this year at Greenville at those upper levels.
The thing that's so exciting about that system is that so many of those guys are playing together at these lower levels now and climbing together, but for Moncada, it's such a high ceiling at such a young age. He came over pretty advanced. I mean, a guy who came from Cuba and was, most people thought, the best teenage prospect to come over since Jorge Soler came over, but he plays like a kid who is more advanced in years than what he is. That's why I think it probably stands out to people so much who follow this organization. Take the training wheels off and let the kid, be who he's going to be.
Yeah, and what we've seen out of him this offseason, just how he's kind of built like a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how we knew he was like that anyways, but the kind of muscle he's even putting on now, it's a cliche. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life, but, just seeing some of those vines, I think, has opened up a lot of people's eyes, and now they want to see him even more, at a major league level or an upper level of the minors.
The rivalry in the American League East between the Boston Red Sox and their mortal enemies, the New York Yankees, that's the team we're headed to next. The Yankees, we've discussed this many, many times. Major League Baseball has shifted, even for the large market teams, to a build-within type of mentality in large part. And the Yankees would be the last team that you would figure would embrace that philosophy.
Yeah.
But they've gotten a lot of good returns out of that. We saw what Greg Bird did this year. Came on, really filled in well for Mark Teixeira. There are some of the guys in the Yankee system who it feels like we've been waiting around forever to see if they're going to break out, but Gary Sanchez looks like he's on the verge of doing that. Aaron Judge has put up some really impressive numbers in his career. That's a team that not a lot of people would realize how many pieces they have in place who can really make impacts, and pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think that's what they should be wishing for this year, is that by the end of the season, they can show their fans that we have the options internally to fix all these problems. Carlos Beltran is going to be older. Brian McCann is going to be a year older. Mark Teixeira is going to be a year older. Maybe all these guys are moving closer to being DHs. I know they have Alex Rodriguez, too, did a pretty good job this year at DH, but they're just going to have so many of these aging guys and some of these guys off contracts, and the obvious response for the Yankees is go spend the money and find, that's how you get Jacoby Ellsbury. For however millions and millions of dollars that he had, and now that contract kind of looks bad because he's aging that quickly. So what they want to do is they want to have Judge, Bird, Sanchez, even Rob Refsnyder show that some of the holes that they can fix aren't necessarily by spending the money or spending the prospects, that they have the guys in the system ready to fill those holes, particularly with Judge and Sanchez. We're hoping Sanchez, what he did in the AFL, what he did at the end of the year at Scranton Wilkes-Barre, is a sign that he is ready for the majors. They traded away their backup already this offseason, so they think he's ready. But what they want out of their system this year is to have those guys at the top, they have somebody exciting in Jorge Mateo, an absolute barn burner. He's their top prospect. According to Baseball America, their list came out today on Monday. So they have some exciting names, but I think what they want is those guys at the top really breaking down the door and showing they're not just fourth or fifth outfielders, they're small pieces, they're legitimate guys, first division starters.
Mateo will be fun to watch this year because it was such a breakout season for him. He swiped 71 bags in his first stop this year, which was at Class A Charleston in the South Atlantic League. Moved up, played 21 games for Tampa in the Florida State League, and swiped another 11, so 82 steals. Freakish speed. But it seems like, and from the people that I've talked to in the Yankees organization for a couple stories on him this year, what's impressive is that he knows when to pick his spots. He knows how to utilize the speed. Some guys aren't necessarily that way, and we talked about that a little bit last week and how different it is just in the way speed plays on a baseball field versus straight speed. So where you have these thumpers, where you have guys like Greg Bird who have already made it, or Aaron Judge who's on the verge, or even Gary Sanchez with some pop, the Yankees have a guy like this too who's really exciting, who's a little bit lower down in the system.
Yeah, and he plays a primo position at shortstop, and he plays it pretty well too. So that's somebody to get excited about for the future. But I think Yankees fans really want to be excited for now because they're a win now team forever and ever.
The Tampa Bay Rays, Sam. This is a team where the conversation right now sort of begins and ends with Blake Snell. But behind Blake Snell, who is our pitcher of the year, starting pitcher of the year for the 2015 Milby, there's a lot of really good pitching in that system that's not just him. The pitching in that system is so good. A guy like Jacob Faria, who is the minor league wins leader, wins an ERA title, I believe, as well. Jacob Faria's not even ranked in that system.
Right.
That's how good the pitching is in the Rays system.
Yeah. They just got so many arms that I think could turn into something. I think Brent Honeywell, who's a friend of the site and that he's very willing to talk, has that kind of makeup that he understands what he does. I think for both Honeywell and Snell, what their goals should be for 2015 is show that this wasn't a fluke.
Yeah.
They certainly have the stuff. The scouting reports show that this is not some small thing, but with Snell, it seemed like he figured out some of his control problems. At least they didn't hurt him as much as they had in the past. With Honeywell, he really came up on the scene this year. Now he's a top 50 prospect overall. So what they're looking to do with both of those guys at different levels, Honeywell is going to be maybe starting out the year Double-A. Snell wants to start the year in the majors, as he's told us. But show that these guys are here to stay and that they're legit pitching prospects to get excited about. I think they would love to have Snell up after the Super 2 deadline. I don't know if they're going to quite have it that way. But between Taylor Guerrieri, who's had his own problems this year, got added to the 40-man, so he's really going to have his own test this year. They have the arms. I think they want to turn those arms into major league ready arms as soon as they can, and these breakout guys to show that they're the real thing.
The conversations, obviously, that have surrounded the Rays in recent days have been that they've been in conversations with other teams to acquire maybe an outfielder, maybe there's a starting pitcher, is it Jake Odorizzi, who is it on the market from Tampa Bay, and I think it's because there's such a surplus in that system that it looks like that is an area where the Rays could part with somebody if they needed to. That's how loaded that organization is right now. And they're fun guys to watch, too. I mean, Blake Snell, the entire season, he was doing things. Even after the scoreless inning streak ended, it was still like as close as you get to must-see TV in the minor leagues when Blake Snell was on the mound.
Especially when he was in AAA in Durham. You know you were going to get him for 5-inning stints because that's how they were handling him. And he was still getting 8-9 strikeouts a game at that clip. So it was definitely fun to watch for him. And now, again, he'll have the shackles off in the beginning of the year, and we'll get to see what he does then. Toronto
Blue Jays made it within a breath of the World Series. We're very much a win-now organization for this year, but they reshaped their minor league system a lot. The Troy Tulowitzki deal cost them a few really big prospects, Jeff Hoffman being the headliner in that one. So a lot of young talent that's at the top of that system. They seem to be a little bit caught in limbo now, too, because you've got some aging, expensive contracts at the major league level. There's some good talent in the minor league system, but it seems kind of far away. How does that stack up for Toronto going into next year?
They made a lot of trades and they kind of cleared out their system a little bit as far as those things go. The thing that I wrote down for their wish list is just to see what they have in Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yes.
Not only for the name, not only for the potential swing, everything we want to see about Vladimir Guerrero 2.0.
Yes.
But just they gave him a $3.9 million signing bonus to come over. Across the board, he's kind of average as far as what expectations are for when he makes the majors. But now we'll get to see him. He's 16 right now. He's going to be turning 17 in March. Just to see if he can live it up to it. He hasn't played a minor league game yet, so where are they going to put him? what is he going to be able to do once he's on the field? Is he going to be able to handle the comparisons to his father? This Blue Jays system is kind of down right now. I think the most exciting player is Anthony Alford. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. certainly could become that player very quickly. So I want to see what they can get out of him.
Of the top 15 prospects in that system right now, 13 of them have never seen action above Class A Advanced.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows you how far off some of those guys are. Max Pentecost is going to be another guy to follow, too, because he didn't play at all this year. He's battled some injury problems throughout his career. Really high ceiling as a catcher. Grades out pretty well in every category and was, kind of one of those Cape Cod League breakout guys a few seasons ago, but didn't play at all this year. And that, I don't know if it concerns you yet because he's only 22, but you really like to see him get back, get a full season and work in and see some success at a sustained level.
Definitely.
Let's move to the American League Central Division, where, again, last year there was a whole lot of off-season work and then not a lot of in-season success for the Chicago White Sox. We just saw that team swing a trade as part of that three-team deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Cincinnati Reds, so somewhat reshaped their minor league system with dealing away some prospects there. The White Sox, similarly somewhat to the Blue Jays, caught kind of in limbo right now. Are they a team that looks at 2014, the offseason coming into 2015, as a failure? They lose Jeff Samardzija. Some of the way that roster stacked up obviously did not lead to a lot of success at the major league level. So now do you go back to being a team that tries to build from within?
Yeah, I think with the White Sox, they made – the big thing for me is just the way they picked up Carson Fulmer. He kind of fell into their lap this year. He was a high pick, number 8, a Vandy guy. Got a lot of attention because of Dansby Swanson. People went to the games, and they saw him too. Was a closer during his time with Vandy, but turned into a starter and a very good starter. He's 6'1", 190 pounds. Some people still think he's going to be a reliever. So I think what they really want out of him is that he becomes a starter, shows that he can be the starter, shows that he can kind of be Carlos Rodon 2.0 for them, at least from the right-hand side, show that they draft college pitching very, very well. If they could make those guys the two cornerstones of their rotation going forward, and if they decide they're willing to hold on to Chris Sale, I think the trade for Frazier is a sign that they're going to go for it this year and try to compete in an AL Central that's a little down right now, even though it's going to have the defending champions and Kansas City Royals. I think that division's a little more wide open now. So I think what they would love to have happen is Fulmer joins the rotation at some point during the year and just becomes another really key controllable piece for them going forward.
I talked to a scout in the Tampa Bay Rays organization the other day who talked about Carson Fulmer and the work that he was putting in, some instructs work, and how impressive he looked. It was really, really limited stint, but looked like a frontline type of guy. And, if you're going to part with somebody like Frankie Montas, you have to know that there's a prospect who can fill that void behind him. And so maybe that's what the White Sox see in somebody like Carson Fulmer. The Cleveland Indians are a team that it seems like have been more competitive more recently than has actually been the case. It's been a lean stretch in Cleveland, and we have seen some of these guys who've come into the system be a little bit less than I think what we expected. I mean, Clint Frazier has put up some pretty good numbers, but has not been the world-beating prospect I think that a lot of people forecasted. But on the other side, there's Bradley Zimmer, who sort of came out of nowhere. I mean, a high draft pick, but man, his ceiling is exploded.
Yeah, he went from a guy who was just like average all around to all of a sudden being a 60 grade power guy, 55 grade running guy. It just has that really awesome mix of both speed and power. 16 homers this year, 44 stolen bases. So they would love to see him just to maintain that, not to build up and then build back down again. They would love to see him become a legitimate top 20 prospect, a guy banging down the door, September call-out type situation. What I think the Indians would really love this year is nothing but good news out of Brady Aiken.
Yes.
They kind of rolled the dice by taking a guy who was taken obviously first overall. Astros found some problems with him, tried to negotiate out of a deal with him. They ended up not signing him. He goes back, has Tommy John surgery after his time at the IMG Academy. So the Indians roll the dice, take him 17th overall. They would love to come into this year. He's not going to pitch probably till the middle of the year. Even then, it's going to be very limited. But they want to come out of the year with him nothing but healthy and looking like an absolute steal by the end of 2016.
One of the other guys who's fun in that system is Bobby Bradley. 27 homers this year in 108 games at Class A, Lake County, and, I mean, legitimate power going forward in a division where there's already some pretty big bashers throughout basically not just every major league roster, but every system in the AL Central. But Bobby Bradley, as far as prospects go, he puts himself at the top of that conversation. The Detroit Tigers, big spenders at the major league level, but right now have fallen off because of the big moves that they made that haven't necessarily worked out, the David Price deal, the Yoenis Cespedes deal. This system, I think, is not quite as exciting as the rest in this division. But, Michael Fulmer is a guy at the top of the rankings for the Tigers who has the look of somebody who could fit into an upper level spot in that rotation, because Justin Verlander's not going to be around forever.
Yeah.
That organization at some point is going to need somebody to replace what really good starting pitching they've had at the front line in their rotation for a long time.
Yeah, and as you say, with Verlander, he's not going to be there forever, and we're already seeing him slip. He's
right.
Certainly not the Verlander of 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. So Fulmer's their only top 100 guy. He's really their hope going forward. Somebody that they can bring up. He will be in AAA this year. Hopefully it's a short skip from there. He was the Eastern League Pitcher of the Year this year, making 2 stops, obviously, between Erie and Binghamton. Was good at both spots. So there is plenty of consistency going there for him after a couple of years of inconsistency and injuries. So they would love to see him build off that. I think, for me, what the big thing I want to see in the Tiger system is just something out of their number 2 prospect, which is Steven Moya. He spent the past couple of years, where he shows big-time power. This year he hit 23 homers. A couple of years ago, I know he hit it 30-plus. But he's in that similar scenario with Joey Gallo and the Rangers, which we'll get to later. But 175 strikeouts this year with AAA Toledo, or in the minors, between AAA Toledo and Class A Advanced Lakeland. He's got all the power in the world. He just needs to make contact on a regular basis to show that off. Right now, he's no more than just a 4th or 5th outfielder, and they would love to squeeze more out of him and show him that he's major league ready. They've given him taste before. He hasn't been able to crack it and stay. So if they can get anything out of him this year, I think that would be a positive.
There's not a lot to complain about if you're a Kansas City Royals fan at all, obviously. This season was the dream that last season did not end in. The Royals made bold moves, gave up some minor league talent that has really, really tremendous upside. When you win a World Series, you can swallow any of that. But obviously, the system looks a lot different now than it looked this time last year. There's 2 first-round pitching prospects that are gone. Sean Manaea and Brandon Finnegan both out of the future in that organization. So it looks a little bit more watered down than what it would have been at this time last year. But again, you won the World Series, so everything seems like it's pretty well gravy at this point.
Exactly.
But Raul Mondesi headlines that, makes his Major League debut in the World Series, first guy to ever do that. Behind him, there's a lot of question marks in guys looking to reclaim prospect status. Bubba Starling did that to a large degree this year. Can Kyle Zimmer do that? Because we know that he's had his struggles at times throughout his career. That is the name of the game right now, it seems like, for the Royals, is continuing to find gems where other people haven't been able to find them. That's been their MO for 3 straight years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we bring up a good point with Zimmer and Starling. I think those are 2 guys that we have just talked about forever.
Yeah.
And that 2016 is definitely a make-or-break year for them. I think we've said that about 2015, and we may have even said that about 2014 for both of those guys, too. So we're getting to the point where either they're going to be something or they're not. For Zimmer, it all comes down to health, which I know is out of his control. But if health issues continue to be a problem next year, then it's a question. It's going to define his career at that point. It's not going to be somebody who overcame injuries and lost his stuff. It's going to be he's always the injured guy, and they're not going to be able to rely on him going forward. So they would love to see health out of him. I think they would love to see him at least get a couple of games as a starter. Maybe he might stick as a reliever going forward just to limit his innings, limit his potential for injuries. But if they can get something out of him as a starter all summer, that would be great for them. Starling, I think we saw some good signs in the AFL and at the end of the year. You got at Northwest Arkansas, continued to show really, really good defense. Everything you hear about his defense because of his athleticism is great. So I think they would love to see him get a crack at AAA Omaha, hit somewhat, continue to play at plus center field. And with Alex Gordon potentially gone, we know how good he was in left for the Royals all these years. They would love to see Starling kind of come in and be that potential, at least defensive replacement. I don't know if he's ever going to hit as well as Alex Gordon in the majors ever or at any level. But just have him be another option for them and another reliable option, because for the past couple of years it didn't seem like he was going to be that guy, but it's growing into that again.
When you're the World Series champions, everything's fine. Don't
Yeah,
worry,
everything's
Royals
rosy.
fans.
Yeah,
we don't even need
you're
to
fine.
spend much time on your system. You're
Let
fine.
this last you for the next decade, no matter what happens.
Another guy who it is unfair that it feels like we've been talking about forever, but Byron Buxton and the Minnesota Twins have been at the forefront of this conversation for a very long time. Byron Buxton is still very young. He has all the talent, all the potential in the world. There's a reason why he's been the top prospect in Major League Baseball for the last now. He'll be going into his third year, I believe, as number one overall. But the injuries have been an issue for him. This year, finally gets that first taste in the big leagues. An injury cuts that short. I don't think it's make or break for Byron Buxton because he's so young, but you really would love to see him put together a full wire-to-wire season of this is why he is the guy in that system.
Yeah, and I think the Twins are ready for him to do that too. We mentioned before the Yankees trade. They get Aaron Hicks, and the reason why the Twins decided he was movable was because I believe they think that Byron Buxton is ready to start opening day as their center fielder. And I think they really want him in center field because Miguel Sano is going to be their left fielder, which has me, not shaking my head, but just like stroking my chin and questioning that.
Yeah.
We know he's got the arm, but he definitely doesn't have the range, so Buxton's going to have all the range out there.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have that much, confidence in him is a sure sign of how much confidence they have. Buxton, for that system overall, I think they have just kind of the next wave of talent is kind of there, and they would love to it all arrive at this same time. Jose Barrios is definitely going to make his major league debut next year after having.
He's invited to major league camp. We found that out this past week.
Exactly, yeah, and the way he pitched at both AA and AAA this year, he's knocking down the door. I'm sure he wanted to be in the majors last year.
Yeah,
he even said that in a Q&A that's kind of grown amongst the MILB.com offices. We talk about it so much, but. Between him, Jorge Polanco is their number 4 prospect, has some major league experience. Max Kepler got that touch last year. Alex Myers got a taste of it too. There's so much talent that's just ready for them, and the Twins, the way they're built, they're going to need them all to arrive at the same time. And they were threatening to get a wild card spot this year. So if they all come at the right time, all click the way they should, this could be an exciting year for the Twins.
6 top 100 prospects in that system, and don't sleep on Nicky Gordon either, who is the number 6 prospect in that organization. And he's got a brother you may have heard of in D. Gordon, and
a father you may have heard of.
you may have heard of as well. Pretty talented family. Let's move to the American League East and the Houston Astros, who are as loaded gets, and are still that way even after unloading a whole lot of pitching talent to the Philadelphia Phillies in that big trade. Right now, the Astros seem like everything has gone to plan for them with this rebuild, but there is still so much on the way. Now, some of these guys who are really highly ranked in that system are young. We're not going to see Daz Cameron for a while. We're not going to see Kyle Tucker for a while. But the other guys who really feel like they can move pretty quickly, A.J. Reed is going to be there very, very soon.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that they have a pretty big hole now at first base.
Yeah.
It seems like John Singleton's job to lose, which we kind of expected. If you talked to me 2 years ago and said, John Singleton's going to be the opening day first baseman for the Astros, I'd shake my head and say, yeah, and what's the problem? But he hasn't really shown it in the majors yet, that ability to hold on. Used to be a really big-time prospect. Now not so much. So I think what the Astros will love is that A.J. Reed carries his results to 2016 and really is able to grab hold of that first base job. They non-tendered Chris Carter, a guy with big-time pop but doesn't necessarily have the average numbers and strikes out a ton. So they would love Reed to kind of grab hold of it, show he's ready, maybe at Fresno to start the year, maybe at Corpus Christi. Either way, they have a hole at first base right now that I think they really, really want him to fill. Another guy I'm a big fan of, we talked about him on the podcast before, Joe Musgrove.
Yeah.
Just his control numbers are so insanely good, so exciting to see just on a stats page. I think they would love for him to turn his minor league pitcher of the year award last year into some major league time next year and carry that control next year against obviously some more patient major league hitting. But I haven't even talked about their first prospect, number 1 prospect, Alex Bregman, who is a high draft pick this year, number 2 overall. See what happens to him in his full season debut. So there's still some excitement there. They graduated a bunch of guys. They traded a bunch of guys. Mark Appel's now Philadelphia Philly, as we talked before on the podcast. But they're still tons to kind of sink your teeth into in that Houston system.
There's a lot of guys in that system, too, who are lower down in the rankings who feel like they have the projectability to be impactful major leaguers. I mean, Tony Kemp is the number 10 prospect in that system. He can play all over the place, very versatile, very athletic, but he's not a guy that, how good that system is, he's not a guy you really look at as like, man, that guy has to hit for this team to be successful.
Yeah.
That's their number 10 prospect. I mean, that's how successful the Astros have been in building this farm system up, which is ridiculous. But what the Royals have in things to be excited about for last year, that's like what the Astros have for things to be excited about for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a very fun time to be a Houston Astros fan. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, a system I don't want to call barren, but certainly not the sexiest system in baseball.
If you don't want to call it barren, I'll call it barren. It's fine.
All right, Sam's taking the barren.
Yeah, I'll take the barren. I'll say it because it really is. I mean, you look at the team right now, and there's not really too much in that system.
I should apologize to the Yankees fans because I said that was the team that you would figure would be the last holdout on the building from within. The Angels are really the last holdout. The Angels are the team that has tried to do everything at the major league level.
Yeah, the signing of Josh Hamilton.
Right.
We've seen how that's kind of blown up in their faces. Just because of the amount of money involved, personal issues aside, just how much money you sink into one player and what could happen no matter what's going on there. So for the Angels, I when we were going through this earlier today, and I'm writing down things for my wish list, obviously they love to develop a top 100 prospect. That's easier said than done. And I don't know if there's anybody really in that system that can turn into a top 100 prospect as it stands. So the thing I wrote down is maybe just draft well this year.
It could be.
They have the 20th overall pick, which isn't the sexiest pick either. You're not going to get a surefire top 100 guy there. But maybe somebody falls into their lap that not only they like, but the rest of us really like too. Somebody who they can kind of dream on, can carry the system for a couple of years. And maybe if they just draft very well and very deeply and sign all these guys, that's how you refill a barren system like the one they have. And again, I'll use that word. So I think for them, that's what I'm going to be paying attention to, is how well they draft, how well they can stock up the system. And maybe they trade it all away at the deadline again later or next offseason now with the Trey Turner rule. But build up the system, and that's the way you do that in minor league baseball is through the draft. So
there's just not a ton. I mean, if you're an Angels fan, being able to go for it, being able to, there's an ownership group, there's a front office there that is committed to doing things at the major league level. Obviously, with the Jerry Dipoto and the Mike Scioscia situation, maybe there's some disconnect in the way that certain people wanted to do it and the way that ownership and the coaching staff maybe wanted to handle things. But if you're an Angels fan, continue to be excited about the fact that your team will go after major league talent. But the minor leagues right now, it's kind of a rough stretch. The Oakland Athletics have reshaped themselves in some different acquisitions as well. This is one of those layback years, I think, for the A's. They pick their spots. They know when they're able to make runs and win division titles and get into the playoffs and be that exciting team that nobody knows how continues to be exciting over 2 decades with so many factors you would think stacked against them as an organization. But they do as good a job as anybody in cashing in on their best minor league talent. We know the big power bats that they have. Franklin Barreto, top prospect in the system. Matt Olson, the number 2 prospect in the system. Matt Chapman has some poppies, number 5. Renato Nunez, I still remember watching some camp games at A's spring training in Hohokam back in March. Nobody hit the ball anywhere as hard as Renato Nunez. Not major leaguers, minor leaguers, whoever. He hits the ball as hard as anybody. He's the number 6 prospect in that system. But a guy that I love looking at in that organization, we can talk about in a minute, is Sean Manaea. Because Sean Manaea, the Kansas City Royals, I don't want to say gave up on, but included him obviously in a trade a year after being a first overall or a first round selection. So he's a really big, exciting future frontline guy, I think, in that system too. But right now, the bats are the big thing in Oakland's organization.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when we're talking wish list, I think they would love to see Barreto become, we talk about this next class of shortstops a lot, the Lindors, the Correas, the Bogartses, the Seagers, all that stuff. I think they would love to see him join that kind of class, or at least be the next wave of it, along with the Orlando Arcias of the world, that kind of thing. Showed a really, really good season this year. I think he had a broken bone that kind of derailed him, but right now he's the number 7 overall shortstop prospect. Number 7 shortstop prospect in the game. I would love to see him build on that, hit 13 homers in 90 games. That's in the Cal League. take that with however much salt you want to, but he's still only 19. He's going to turn 20 in February. So this is a season where he can really pop and become that kind of next wave of shortstops that I'm talking about. But yeah, like Matt Olson is a guy I don't think you mentioned, but has a lot of pop. MLB.com gives him a 65 grade for his power. Walks a ton, had 105 walks.
That's what's really exciting about him.
Yeah, he can really become an Adam Dunn type, which would be perfectly okay for the A's if he can show. He's not going to hit anything higher than maybe 260 at a major league level, but if he continue to show a great eye, some great patience, and a ton of power when he does make contact, they'll have something to build on. He can kind of work his way back into a top 100 if he does that in the PCL.
Crazy thing about Matt Olson, the A's had 3 picks in the first 50 in 2012. Have already traded 2 of those guys away, Daniel Robertson and Addison Russell. And so that's the one guy left from that group. When you looked at it, it's like, man, look at what the A's got out of this draft.
Yeah.
And 2 of those 3 guys are already gone,
right,
which is a little bit insane.
And that's another point with Barreto, too, is that they did trade away Addison Russell. So just from a story perspective, I know a lot of Oakland fans are like, we could have Addison Russell at shortstop right now, and we don't. And it's like, well, Barreto could become his own interesting piece. So the better he gets, the better the Josh Donaldson trade looks, the better the Addison Russell trade will look, at least in some hearts and minds.
Seattle Mariners are an organization that is in the midst of change. It was actually, I wrote the organization All-Star story on the M's last week, and it was almost difficult to write it because the entire player development staff has changed over. Coaches are still there, but a new GM, Jerry DiPoto, moves up to the Pacific Northwest. Andy McKay, now the player development director, who comes over from the Rocky system where he was a mental skills coach, basically. And you and I have talked so often about, like, how is that going to translate?
Yeah.
But he's in charge now of rebuilding a system that has some exciting pieces, but I got to be honest, there were some positions where it was tough to find guys to name organization all-stars because there did not seem to be those huge breakout steps across the system as you see in a lot of different organizations. There were some of those guys for the Mariners. There weren't a ton of those guys for the Mariners.
Yeah, and it's kind of been an interesting offseason for the Mariners. They're definitely a team of the offseason, and that Jerry DiPoto is just making so many moves.
Yeah.
But they're all at the major league level.
Right.
You can't really look at their system right now and say, oh, that guy is much more interesting, or made this system much more interesting. I think Boog Powell is as close as that's going to come, but he's not a farm system game changer by any means. So the way this system is going to have to look better is just internal options. These guys are just going to simply have to be better. And I think that starts with Alex Jackson, and I think that starts with DJ Peterson, 2 of their top 3 prospects. Jackson, his tools just screamed, such a high ceiling coming out of high school. MLB.com still has him as a 60 grade hit tool and a 60 grade power tool. I remember talking, we did prospect primers in the spring, and I talked to their guys then, and they were just so excited for him, and he just stumbled so much out of the gate at Class A Clinton. Kind of refounded a little bit at Everett. Hit 8 homers there in 48 games, excuse me. And so the tools are there. Still a young guy, still only 19. If he can put it together, Peterson the same way. He's a guy. He used to be a 30-homer guy. Not going to be at third base probably in the majors because they have Seager there and they love Seager there. They've given him an extension. But if he can kind of force his way to first or some way, he's going to have to show that power. Starting at Tacoma this year. So if they can get those 2 guys on track, then they'll have 2 very exciting offensive pieces. But it's going to have to come from internal options. They haven't really built up the farm system this offseason.
I'm really interested to see the way that Tyler O'Neill follows up this year. The power has always been there for him, but this year, 32 homers, 87 runs batted in. It comes in the California League. It comes at Bakersfield. But Bakersfield is not high desert. It's not like you're playing at a launching pad necessarily, or Lancaster. So that, to me, will be one of the most fascinating guys to follow for next season because – is that legitimate? Is that the way? Is that going to be the profile for Tyler O'Neill going forward? Is he a corner bat in the outfield who's going to be able to drive in runs and give you protection in the lineup for somebody like DJ Peterson if he can continue to develop power-wise, or if Robinson Cano is still there hitting in the middle of an order as the years go by and Tyler O'Neill continues to climb. He fascinates me. He's one of the guys who you can tell the organization loves the way that the coaching staffs have talked about him over his seasons. And 32 homers at any level in the minors is nothing to sneeze at. So Tyler O'Neill, seemingly a lot of bright days ahead for him as well. But I think that's another fan base. We were kind of talking about it with the Indians. somewhat starved for at least a season of good contention. The Indians have had their spurts here and there. The Mariners, it's been a while since the Mariners were in one of those conversations.
Yeah, and then you would think, with the signing of Cano, everybody was excited for it. So there is some excitement there. And with all these moves that DePoto's making, just little tweaks here and there, Leonis Martin, Adam Lind, they're not game changers. They're not headliners by any means, but he's trying to make that roster better by half steps here and there. So there's something to sink your teeth into and say maybe the Mariners, this is the year they click.
And they hung in there. I mean, this year they were there. They were hanging in I don't want to say a mediocre division, but a division that wasn't full of world beaters. The Rangers won that division at 88 and 74. The Mariners finished 76 and 86, but they were in it until those last few weeks. So yeah, is that going to be enough to get those little role players, those little tweaks at the major league level to make it exciting? And can these guys continue to at least get closer to maybe 2017 and a lot of profiles for some of these younger guys making an impact?
Yeah, I mean, if they can find 10 wins with these moves they've made, then we're talking wild card contention very easily with the way the playoffs work now.
Texas Rangers, American League West Division champions in 2015, and the athletes at the top of the system for Texas are so freakish. That system is perpetually loaded, but there is nobody in baseball that I think any of us are as excited about maybe going into 2016 as Joey Gallo.
Oh, for sure. Gallo was it was such a confounding year for him in 2015 because he got that chance. He was blowing the league away in Double-A, and the Texas League Rangers decided to send him right up to the majors. Has some stumbles there because Major League, as a guy who could strike out 33% of his time in the minors, it was close to 40% in the majors. So the Major League pitching really figured him out. But this was his age 21 season,
right?
And he's a great jiffable player. I'll call it that because his power. We don't use that enough. I think that's something we need to start bringing to MLB.com.
Great jiffable player.
He's a great jiffable player.
GGP. That's going to be a future acronym.
In that he just the power he has. It's batting practice power. It's in-game power. He'll hit it all over the park. A couple of years ago at the Futures game, he was the talk of the Futures game for hitting a truck, I think.
Shatter the windshield.
Yeah, exactly.
On the concourse.
So if he can somehow show that he can cut down those strikeouts or at least make contact a little more often, or be a guy who's gonna, when he's not making contact, is making loud, or when he's not making oodles of contact, that he's still making loud contact when he does hit the ball. I think this is the last year of Adrian Beltre's contract, so they're going to need somebody at third base going forward. They tried him out a little bit in left field. He even started a game in center field, which is a bit of a head stretch. Good athlete, but doesn't have the range for that.
Yeah.
So how is he going to fit into their plans? Hopefully he forces the issue upon them this year. They would love for him to start the year in the majors, somehow force that issue starting in spring training. Already has that experience, so his clock has already started. But if he doesn't, they would love him for him to beat down the door at Round Rock in what is still going to be his age 22 season. But even if they do move him to the outfield and decide that's his future position, we're talking about Lewis Brinson and Omar Mazar out there.
Exactly.
So it's a good problem to have for the Rangers, and that's what they would love to have at the end of the 2016 season, is that they still have good problems on their hands.
The opening line on MLB Pipeline's description of Lewis Brinson kind of hits the nail on the head with the Rangers system. It says, quote, "In a farm system laden with toolsy players, Brinson is the toolsiest." Which is a word that is a ton of fun in itself, and also describes Brinson very accurately. But that's how good that system is. It's just full of athletes everywhere, guys who do multiple things really, really well. Joey Gallo plays a very good defensive role also. He's not one of those guys that you throw out there, minor league power bat, has no business being in the field. He holds his own defensively,
too.
They
they want to put his bat in the lineup, and they can do that. So it's not so much sticking at him at first just because he's the stereotypical first baseman and that he's big.
Right.
He actually has an arm. He's got a little bit of nimbleness to him. He can certainly stick at third, and the reason why they want to put him in left is it's a little dissimilar from Sano. Sano, with the Twins, they're just kind of moving pieces around, seeing where they stick. I think with Gallo, he could be an okay left fielder. He's at least more. He would have better range out there than Sano would, if not an equal arm. One
of the guys who you should keep an eye on in 2016 and beyond is Michael Matuella. Had Tommy John surgery. Was initially, it looked like, could have been a first overall pick in the the draft coming out of Duke, but didn't stay healthy. Tommy John will likely rob him of a lot of his 2016, his debut season, but that's a guy to keep in mind going forward because his ceiling is very high. What he did at Duke was very, very good. So even though he's going to be coming off of an injury, we've seen guys come off of Tommy John before their professional careers start and still be very successful. Yeah. So keep him in mind.
Right. And they drafted well before that too, taking Dylan Tate with the 4th overall pick. So they actually have some exciting arms now, which I don't know if they've really had for a while.
Let's dovetail into one final topic, just because we're talking about the Rangers right now before we wrap up this Christmas week edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. The Rangers made some news this past week with the announcement that they had signed former top overall pick Matt Bush. Matt Bush, first overall selection in 2004, ran into problems immediately in his professional career, was actually suspended for a bar fight before he had ever played a professional game, was suspended indefinitely. That was about 2 weeks after the draft. He's gotten into a whole host of problems, legal issues, issues with alcohol abuse, all came to a head in 2012 when he was involved in a hit-and-run accident that left a 72-year-old man very seriously injured. He was arrested. He was sent to prison for 3 years. But Matt Bush is out. He was released in October, and I wrote that story, followed the social media comments the next day. Obviously, there's a lot of backlash against somebody like Matt Bush, but I very much admire the Rangers for being willing to take a chance on a guy who's had issues in his career. They did it successfully with Josh Hamilton, and you hope that this is something that turns somebody like Matt Bush's life around. He still has the physical tools to do it. He was throwing 95 miles an hour in bullpens. Once he got out of prison, was working out for scouts. Matt Bush has had more than a few second chances. You hope this is the one that makes it stick for him.
Yeah, and I think we have to highlight that if he didn't have a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, this wouldn't happen. Right. This isn't a story about a redemption project and look at the Rangers doing a nice thing. If he didn't have the tools right now, if they didn't see it, they wouldn't be doing this. So I think it comes down to first and foremost on the field product, and it's not exactly that big of a risk. It's a minor league deal. It's not something like the Angels did with Josh Hamilton. You bring that up, and the Rangers have taken him back on, but it's just a small deal. They'll see how it works. They can cut him in at any time, and we'll see what happens. I mean, we would love to see him. It'd be a good redemption story. Yeah. See his character turn around, see all the problems behind him, and nothing but results on the field. And hopefully, we're talking to him in June or something about good things. But it's an interesting move, and we'll see if it works out.
There's not a whole lot ventured for the Rangers, but they could gain a lot in a productive guy and a guy who you hope really gets things turned around. And to your point, Sam, there was a very interesting quote from John Daniels, the Rangers general manager. It was really the recommendation of Roy Silver, who's a special assistant in the Rangers player development program, who's done a lot of work helping young people through substance and alcohol abuse issues. And John Daniels said, quote, Roy said if he was throwing 85 and not 95 and the Rangers in Major League Baseball would not be interested in him, I'd still be in his life. And that's what I thought was really cool. I mean, that's not just a baseball story, it's a life story. And we got so much feedback on this story. I wanted to touch on it before we got done with this week's edition of the show. But that'll do it. That was fun.
That was fun.
We were like, let's go a half hour. So 50 minutes later, we are going to wrap up.
Hopefully you're driving to wherever you're going for the holidays or on your commute home or anything like that. You can save this for later. Listen to it again if you want on your travels back on Christmas. But this is a little different way to mix it up.
This has been a good one. So with that, we're going to bid you farewell for Christmas week. Wherever you are celebrating, whatever holiday you celebrate, I posted a picture of my Festivus poll on Twitter this past week. Happy Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you are celebrating and wherever you're tuned into the Show Before the Show. Thanks a ton for being with us, and thanks a ton for supporting us during our first season of this, because we've had a whole ton of fun with it. We're going to be back next week talking National League teams and getting you set for 2016. And that's on the 39th edition of the Show Before the Show coming up next week. So we'll talk to you then. And until then, enjoy the holidays.